All right, I'm going to get started because we have a jam-packed session today, lots of great speakers with us. So welcome again to everybody who's joining. We're really glad to have you here today. I'm Jade, I'm UK Director at ClimateView, and I'm going to host the session today. Before starting, a little bit of housekeeping. So the session is being recorded, and we'll share a recording of the session afterwards. Please, as we run through today, tell us what you think or raise any questions that you have using Zoom's chat function, which you'll find at the bottom of the webinar window. We'll respond to your questions throughout the webinar, so there's a few opportunities for us to do that, and we'll also finish with a Q&A at the end of the session too. We'll be talking about the practitioner's guide today, and we'll share a download to that with you all after the webinar. And if you'd like to reach out directly about something completely unrelated, you can find us through our website or contact any of us directly. I mentioned that we have a great lineup of speakers with us today. With us is Shalit, co-founder and CPO, who will walk us through the key concepts of the Practitioner's Guide for creating living climate action plans. We also have Lina from Enköping Commune and their partners Therese and Soiza from AFRY, Gavin from Glasgow City Council with their partner Alan from Mott MacDonald, and they're going to give us two very good case studies of how the Practitioner's Guide and the key concepts in it are being put into practice to develop living climate change strategies, and their top tips for getting started. As I said, there'll also be time for Q&A as we run through. So again, I encourage you to ask any question that you have. No question is a bad one as we go through the session. So before we begin, a little bit about ClimateView. We're a Swedish climate software company offering transition planning software and support services. What we're doing here is we're bringing together all the shared learnings from cities planning and delivering climate action over the world into a common structure for developing, delivering and communicating climate plans. At the heart of all of this and what we do here is the ability to create plans that adapt to system changes and create plans that can be iterated easily over time. In this way, plans are created in a transparent way. They provide the best information available at any one time needed so that we can make effective decisions for our communities. ClimateView is already widely adopted by local governments, regions and countries who are using it to plan, act and track progress against their climate goals. ClimateView and the team here want to help cities harness the power of the data available to us today to make better decisions for their cities. And we're doing this by co-creating national data playbooks. We're also standardizing the sphere of climate action planning with the transition element framework, which is the data models that power the platform. They're built on IPCC's climate mitigation options, and the models and methodology is recognized as a national standard in Germany for impact measurement of climate mitigation measures. The session today is split into 3 parts. So the first part will be an introduction from Thomas to the key concepts in the Practitioner's Guide. We'll then hear from 2 cities putting these concepts into practice in real life, Enköping in Sweden and Glasgow City Council. So here's Thomas to start us off by introducing the Practitioner's Guide. Over to you, Thomas.
Good morning, I'm Thomas Shalit. As Jade said, I'm the co-founder and the chief product officer of ClimateView, and I'm going to take you through the core concepts, but then going to dive into examples with Enköping and Glasgow and how they've used. So first of all, I'm going to state the very obvious. Planning a city transition is not an easy job. I think everyone in this room will very much agree. And if we think of it, this is, of course, a multi-level, multi-actor challenge. We have nations that have to work with nations, regions between regions and nations, and communities within the communities, stakeholders between stakeholders, and all of the above. This is super messy. Everyone needs to work together. Things have to happen on all levels. Even the simplest transitions, such as, say, shift to EVs, will require nation collaboration, as in building battery factories in Europe, will require region collaboration, as in making sure we have enough energy, making sure that on the local level we have the planning permissions to build the charging stations, etc. This is always going to require a multi-level collaboration. And the reality that most cities face, the same hurdles. When they sit there in their own area and want to do your own city transition, you're going to sit with fragmented data, siloed systems, very hard to quantify the outcomes of your charging infrastructure, for example, and end up with static plans, which might be long PDFs with maybe clear ambitions, but not very executable. In some shape or form, just about every city we work with are facing about these kinds of hurdles, and we recognize them. And the paradox in all this is that we all hear that we need to iterate. Everyone from C40 to net zero cities to ICLEI are saying, climate action, as well as IPCC, say we have to iterate, we have to work in parts. In the same time, everyone in this room knows we have to have system thinking. We have to see the big picture. So we have this paradox. How do we keep the whole in view while working with the specific parts? That is the paradox and a very big challenge. So that's what we're going to talk about today, and some examples, how you keep structure, keep the whole in place, while still being able to iterate with the pieces, because you need some kind of structure, some kind of architecture. Because with no architecture, it's going to be very messy. With an architecture, we're going to show how you can actually start keeping the whole whilst working with the pieces. So I'll talk about the architecture of the platform at high level. So first of all, we have the foundation. Start with what you have. Understand the city's current challenge, all the activities going on. Also understand the goals that the city has set, net zero by 2045 or whatever. This is the foundation. We need to know what state we are in before we get going. Then we have to start setting the strategy. Decide what needs to change, what shifts need to happen, shifts to EV, shift to heat pump, shift to public transport, retrofitting the buildings, the actual transitions that need to happen. That's setting the strategy and how they all are interconnected. Then when we have set the strategy, we have to start planning what we will do to achieve that strategy. What kind of policies, interventions, investments do we need to do to enact and put the strategy into place? And then, of course, we have to check if it's working. The measure, experience, learn, plan, do, check, act, whatever we call it, any framework of climate action will talk about some kind of iterative loop where we decide what to do, we do stuff, and then we measure how it's going so that we can adapt. So we'll always need to do that. So start with what you have, understand your current state, decide what needs to change, plan what you need to do, design your actions, and check if it's working, and do again, rinse and repeat. And in the ClimateView platform, in essence, gives you the windows into these different parts. You have the inventories and the goal setting in the foundation. You have tools to build your strategy with the transition elements, as Jade described, the building blocks of the transition. You have support to design your interventions, design your actions so that you can achieve those strategies. And then you have like an X-ray through all the different parts to understand what's moving and what's not. And as I'll say again and again, you work in loops. You have to move through those 4 connected steps: foundation, strategy, action, progress, because you need to work in the parts, but keep the whole in view. I think you're beginning to see the schema here. So if we talk about these loops, and we have to do things again and again, we can talk about those loops as maturity, how we build maturity. And think of it as a sketch. We start with the outline of the plan, the very sort of basics. And that's about setting the readiness in place. What data do we have? Is this team set up to deliver even? It's the first sort of sketch. And then very often it's understanding the core activity data. What are the travel habits of the city? How much heating are we using? What is the waste? What is the waste of the city? It's like painting that picture. Then we go deeper, write a bit more details, and we start talking about energy. What's our energy supply and demand, and how is it going to change over time? And then we go even deeper. We start understanding, hang on, if this transition happens, what are the jobs that we're going to get, the health benefits, the equality in the transition. So we go even deeper in that plan. And then we start going to the next level, designing our interventions, the specific project programs and policies we need to put in place. And then going even deeper, the enablers, the finance, the governance, the partnership, the blended finance that's needed to make this happen, so that we can then build a portfolio of actions to actually deliver the plan. So I'm repeating, going through the 4 steps of the architecture, the four components of the architecture, time after time, building maturity over time. And as we'll speak today, Enköping will show how they have gone through the first 2 steps of maturity here together from a clear starting point. And we'll also speak about slide and forwarding. We'll also speak about Glasgow and how they have actually, and talk about the latest steps of the maturity, and how Glasgow has actually gone all the way, nearly to the end goal of the maturity in the climate action plan. So, high level, get started quickly, quick wins over perfection. Again, you've probably heard this many times, but in this seminar is about being try to be very practical about that actually done. Sketch your first outline, baseline target, a few indicators. Time box, you can actually do the first thing in just a few weeks. Choose layers to go incrementally deeper. And as you do that over time, the really important part starts. Engage more stakeholders. Because actually every layer of maturity is nearly always engaging and enlarging that circle of stakeholders that need to be involved. So we stick to the process loop, but go iteratively deeper and deeper and deeper. So, quick overview over the components of the architecture and making things deeper and deeper in layers. I think will give a starting point for Enköping and AFRY to present how they have done their first parts.
Thanks so much, Thomas. I always get so excited hearing that that story and about the methodology that we have co-created with all of the cities, regions, and countries that we've worked with worldwide. So thank you so much for that. We're now going to hear 2 case studies of how these principles are being put into practice in cities. And we're first going to head over to Enköping in Sweden with the team Therese, Åsa and Lina to tell us a little bit about what they've learned and some of the insights that they can share. So over to you.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Lina Salomonsson and I work as a climate and energy strategist at Enköping Municipality. We have been working closely with AFRY throughout this process, and I will now hand over to AFRY for the presentation of our case.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Åsa Wikberg and I work as a sustainability consultant at AFRY. And as Lina said, we've been working closely with the team and the project leaders in Enköping for the last year. So on behalf of Enköping, I will be presenting the Enköping case today. I want to start off with a few basic facts about the city. Enköping has around 45,000 inhabitants, which makes it a mid-sized municipality, at least in a Swedish setting. It's located within the greater Stockholm region. It does have a large commuting population, but it also has a large rural population. It's known as the City of Parks and Sweden's closest city. And the business sector is based around agriculture, logistics, and defense. And I would say that relative to its size, no, you were a bit too quick there. Relative to size, the municipality has quite an ambitious level of its climate work. And we think that this can be an inspiration for other cities across Europe. And I think that one of the key factors for success has been like a really inclusive process engaging a wide range of municipality employees from the outset. Another key success factor is a strong political support and a clear mandate to take action. And the Enköping model is based on 4 core principles. First, we have a transition arena, which is a platform for transition teams to collaborate and to innovate. We have a clear climate strategy and strategic action plan. And third, we have responsibility and follow-up. And fourth, the model is competence engage leadership. Now we can switch. Okay, so the work in Enköping is, despite limited resources, Enköping has really managed to implement a model that engages staff across the administrative borders, like moving away from the silo thinking. And the work is driven forward by 5 cross-functional teams that you see on this slide. And the teams include both staff from the municipality and staff from public companies like the energy company and the water and waste management company. All the team members have been introduced to ClimateView through a series of educational sessions. And this way of involving a larger share of the staff has really helped in, in the analyzing of the strategical steps, and also getting the most out of the ClimateView tool. And the teams have had a number of tasks to work with. They started off by analyzing and selecting transition elements. And a transition element is a tangible action that drives the shift from today's high carbon practice to future low or zero carbon solutions. So for example, it can be like a shift from a fossil fuel car to an electrical vehicle. And the transition elements have to be selected according to the local challenges and possibilities. So that was like one of the first steps. The teams then continued by analyzing their influence on these transition elements. They had to find ways to find elements where they have like a clear direct or indirect impact. The teams also worked with setting targets and analyzing tempo and pace of change that would be necessary to meet these targets. And finally, they have been and they are still working a bit with their action plan. Okay, so now we are at a point where the first iteration is about to be completed. So this slide summarizes the process steps that we have undertaken to reach this point. The process started with a thorough external analysis of best practices in climate mitigation. And I would say that this steps really helped in informing the action plan later on. There was also an onboarding process that was conducted over several months to ensure that all team members had a common starting point. We also had a data inventory, which Therese will talk a bit more about later. Then we had several activities to shape the strategy, which resulted in 9 different strategic development areas. And all this together resulted in an action plan that today comprises around 125 different actions. I need to say the plan is being reviewed at the moment. We have had a consultation round and it's now being revised and reworked, and it will be presented to the local council before the end of the year. So the plan is that the implementation of this action plan will start 2026. So with the completion of this action plan, Enköping has actually concluded its first iteration. And I want to finish off by a quote from Maria. We worked hard to meet people where they are. Everyone's at a different point in the change curve. And the challenge has been to respect that while still pushing forward. I think that's really an important insight when it comes to working with this kind of change. Now I will hand over to Therese, who will provide some more details about AFRY's contribution to Enköping.
Thank you, Åsa. My name is Therese Wernstedt. I'm working as a sustainability expert at AFRY, and I'm also coordinating the AFRY partnership with ClimateView. Yes, as you have heard, we had the privilege of working together with Enköping for more than a year now. As a ClimateView partner, AFRY supports cities in making the most of the platform in a shorter amount of time that then they would have had the chance to do otherwise. So we will also share the insights and learnings from other municipalities in Sweden and abroad. And in that way, speed up the learnings. And our approach in Enköping combined a recurring series of coaching sessions with the transition teams and with the climate teams alongside more defined deliverables. This project was designed to be flexible and adapting to the evolving needs of the team over time. One key insight from these kinds of projects is that it's important to work in this kind of agile approach to offer tailored support to meet the emerging challenges. It's difficult to foresee them always. So we began the project with facilitating a series of onboarding workshops, as mentioned by Åsa. And then we supported the workshops, and our role were there to be this kind of external independent voice in the workshop series. And following the onboarding, we supported the team in populating the baseline inventory in the platform, in the ClimateView platform, with Enköping specific activity data using the climate data playbook, which is a manual providing best practice of climate statistics. And AFRY also facilitated several scenario workshops to set the targets for the selected transition elements. So the transition elements that were selected by the transition teams earlier. And these included private transport, freight transport, and energy use in housing and other buildings. And as a final major delivery, we collaborated with the teams to support the development of the climate strategy and action plan. And this work ensured the alignment with the core pillars, with the structure, with the architecture, the ClimateView architecture, laying the foundation for the future iterations. And let's just deep dive a little bit more into that. Yes, right. So we guided then the transition teams through this series of tempo analysis, the workshop to set the targets for each of the selected transition element and to also balance them among each other. So understanding the pace of transition is the key here. It's not just about tracking the emissions and see how they hopefully are reducing. It's also about understanding the pace and the scale of the transitions translated into activities, and to understand when they need to happen. And this is also key to grasp the size of the actions that are needed. And ask yourself questions. So do we have a balance between what we plan for, in which areas are we planning for the most actions, and where have we planned for the most emissions reduction? Is there a balance here? It's also valuable to compare a model transition, for example, for electrical cars, or transition to more public transport with the prognosis of business as usual. In what tempo and what pace do we need to increase that? And what wins do we have already in the prognosis, maybe, if we see an increase in electrical cars, for example. So we modeled a scenario here with more than 15,000 more electrical cars in the target area. And we can see how this scaling up with exact number of cars per year that need to be introduced in order to meet the targets. And we also see how this corresponds with the emission reduction of 40,000 tons of CO2 in this case. And whether you are planning to assess or calculate the impact of your action or your action portfolio, it's very valuable to see this connection really clear between activities, targets, and emissions, and to get it translated into concrete numbers. This kind of insight makes the transition much more tangible for everyone in the room, in the workshop, and also in the organization, and understand what needs to happen and in each year in order to reach the target. Can take the next one. And just to summarize here, the goal here with our deliveries were to provide the guidance and the shared knowledge, drawing recent learning from other cities, both in Sweden and internationally, and directly apply it to speed up the learnings and the methods development, and to help establish the first steps towards a common language and the campfire to which you can gather around for the climate transition, and to establish a foundation by setting the baseline of the emissions as well as the activities, and to provide the strategy with the insights on tempo and insights on the meaning of what does this level of ambition means, and to ensure that the action plans corresponded to a robust structure, an architecture that can hold for future iterations and further development and follow-up. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much to the team at AFRY and Enköping for sharing some of their experiences of putting into practice what we've been talking about and what Thomas spoke about at the beginning of the session. I love how you're breaking down barriers with your transition teams between different departments across the council and creating collaborative spaces for delivery. I think that's just great. And also how you're working with the information that you have today. You're not sort of waiting for the perfect data, and you're continually iterating your plan as new information and resources develop. So that's really great. And I love the analogy about bringing everyone around that campfire with common language and sharing learning so that we can all do this together in the best way we can with what we have. So thank you very much for sharing. We do have one question for you from the audience. The audience is asking, what's the political support like for your draft climate change strategy, and how have you engaged with the politicians to gain their buy-in for what you're doing?
Yes,
Lena, do you want to say something, or do you want?
Yes, I can. We Enköping Municipality is part of the Viable Cities program, and for quite a long time, 6 years now, and we have like decisions to high climate goals, and now we have this consultation of the climate strategy that will be decided in December, and will then getting started to use it in 2027. So yes, we have decisions about climate neutrality.
But you have also been around to all the political parties, right? And having this consultation round, and I think the feeling is that it's going to pass. But there have been like a few ideas about the things that need to change. But I think you are pretty sure it's gonna pass through the council. They're gonna say yes to it.
We hope so.
Thank you for sharing that. It's always good to note that we always need to make this bridge between politicians and the political world, and also where we sit in delivery. So that's really good. There are a few other questions for you, but we're really tight on time. So I'm going to hand over to the team at Glasgow City, and maybe we can revisit those questions at the end in the general Q&A. But thank you very much. So we'll now hear from Gavin and Alan, who are representing Glasgow City Council today, to share their insights and what they have learnt implementing some of the principles from the Practitioner's Guide. So over to you, Gavin.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay? Good. Okay, yes, so thanks very much for the opportunity to come and speak to you. I'm just going to really set a bit of context about what Glasgow's doing and how ClimateView has helped us, and then Alan can help with some technical questions. Really what we want to set out is Glasgow's a very ambitious city. We've had plans in place to deal with sustainability and carbon and the climate for a long time, but that really coalesced in 2010 when we established our Sustainable Glasgow Partnership. With that, we set our initial target to reduce our carbon emissions by 30% by 2020 on a 2006 baseline. And we managed to achieve that very quickly. In fact, we achieved that in 2015, which led us to start thinking about what's next. The Scottish Government had set a national target for Scotland to be net zero by 2045. But aligned to that ambition, Glasgow decided to go that step further and set its target for net zero carbon by 2030, and that target was enshrined in our climate plan. Now, it's important to make it clear that this was a political ambition, and a political ambition that, to be fair, has activated a huge amount of activity, and that rush to net zero has really helped us get things done. But for officers like me, there was a huge challenge in trying to translate that political ambition into a technical reality. And we decided to do that by looking at what our routes to net zero would be. So we commissioned the delivery of an integrated net zero route map, which we procured Mott MacDonald to deliver, and they brought in as their partner ClimateView. Now, I was already familiar with ClimateView as I had met with Oren and co around the time of Glasgow hosting COP26, and was very keen to work with them because I could really see the value in this approach. Unfortunately, we couldn't work together then, but it was great circumstance that had brought us together to work with Mott MacDonald's. So together we undertook a multi-vector, whole city collaborative appraisal of our pathways to net zero. We assessed all of our strategies and policies, of which there are many, across transport, heat, energy, waste, and more, to determine what we currently had in place and what the absolute limit of our ambition could be. We wanted to ensure that the process was scientifically rigorous, and we wanted to use Science-Based Targets Initiative, but that didn't quite fit our baseline years. And in fact, through a bit of innovation by Mott MacDonald and utilisation of ClimateView, the platform became our scientific framework to map out those potential routes to net zero. Essentially, through doing that, we had identified two different pathways that would take us towards net zero. Those pathways were a projected pathway, which was essentially based on the plans, policies and actions we had in place, and would result in a 60% reduction in emissions with a residual of 40% emissions requiring some sort of carbon sequestration. And an accelerated pathway, which assumed unlimited resources, all the regulations that we needed in government flexibility, which would get us to about an 80% reduction, with that 20% still required to be offset. So that in itself was a great piece of work to have, but this revealed significant challenges as well. So those residual emissions highlighted the scale of carbon sequestration required. And up until this point, we really had just been looking at mitigation and adaptation and not really thinking about what that residual emissions, or not being able to see what that residual emissions picture was. And we also realised that Glasgow simply just didn't have enough land within its boundaries to deal with that problem. This was when we then found out that the formation of the Scottish Climate Intelligence Service was being built utilising ClimateView. And that gave us great access to then take all that we had learned through ClimateView and use that language that we've just heard about to speak to the other cities in Scotland and look at how they would be dealing with the same issues, leading us to a broader conversation about national collaboration. And really taking the conversation beyond just being internally focused about the city, but also thinking about the city's role in the wider country. Glasgow is now also one of only 2 UK cities. I need not remind you all of the horror of Brexit, but one of only 2 UK cities to join the European Union's 100 Net Zero and Climate Resilient Cities initiative. And our success in becoming part of that mission is fundamentally down to the work that we did with ClimateView and Mott MacDonald. The work that we did with ClimateView allowed us to look at all of our transition elements and attach rough order of magnitude costs and create a costed action plan, which is a key requirement for achieving that mission city status. So not only has the utilisation of ClimateView allowed us to understand the steps that we need to take to get to net zero, it has allowed us access to a whole host of funding opportunities, partnerships, technical support and delivery mechanisms for making those actions a reality. And that's a fantastic opportunity for us. So the ClimateView tool has helped us identify our strengths, but also our weaknesses. It's helped us to build the case to recruit new officers and teams to manage the data and intelligence burden that comes with this tool. And it's allowed us to build capacity for continuous learning and innovation. We're now taking what we've learned through our utilisation of ClimateView to deliver innovation around heat planning. District heating is something that is not yet entirely prevalent in Scotland, but is what we need to decarbonise our heat. And it's also helping us to establish a private public sector delivery vehicle to deliver that infrastructure. So this is taking us into the realm of spending billions of pounds on infrastructure, which is embedded in the understanding that we have, having used that ClimateView tool. So in summary, working with ClimateView has been an honestly transformative experience. We're utilising it right now in the redrafting of our climate plan so that we can take the learnings that we've had from the transition elements, that pathway to net zero, create carbon budgets for the city to manage year by year how we are doing in terms of progress. It's given us an enormous opportunity to take all of that intelligence and continue to innovate and amplify the work that we are doing. It's allowed us to bring staff in to continue to grow that as well. So in summary, it's allowed us to be far more intelligent in how we communicate this issue, this challenge, this opportunity, and put us in a position of much greater confidence, which we've been able to share with our stakeholders, our politicians, and show them that we do have a plan and a pathway to net zero. So with that, I'll stop talking and hand over to Alan to see if there's anything he would like to add.
Thanks very much, Gavin. Hi, everyone. I'm Alan Hendry, and I'm the Glasgow City lead for Mott MacDonald and also the European Sustainability lead. So a nice combination of roles in relation to this job. I mean, I think just not going into technical details, but just kind of some reflections, having worked with the platform and the City Council at Glasgow. So as Tomer said, you know, decarbonising a city is not an easy job. It's complex. There are so many players within a city, and certainly in using the ClimateView platform, that was one of the key learnings in terms of, you know, who is responsible for various emissions and how they can actually address them. I think also reflecting on speaking to the leader of the City Council, that she has absolutely loved the work we've done. The things that she really liked was it provided certainty, which, as Gavin said and some others have said as well. So that certainty is so important, because often policies are developed without that certainty. But to know what can be achieved is great. So the platform's been really strong there. The second element, and again, Gavin said it, was actually to understand the costing. So Susan Aiken was delighted that she actually knew what this is going to cost, because in doing that, it then starts to highlight opportunities for others to come in, because the city's never going to do this all on its own. There's so many players who influence the decarbonisation of a city. So that sort of certainty, that costing has been really, really powerful. I think another element that's maybe not been mentioned so far is around sort of some of the co-benefits that are identified as well. So if you look at the transition elements around transport, the transition to more walking and cycling obviously brings a number of health benefits. But then, so going back to the point about who else can play, well, the health board, they're obviously interested in reducing the burden on the health services. So it sees an opportunity for them to support better walking and cycling within the city. And I think also maybe another point that could be made is that the platform also creates a great opportunity for good case material, good ideas that you can borrow from other cities. So we don't always need to reinvent the wheel. if a city is doing something really well, then let's use that. But again, using the platform to get that certainty about the impact that change can make is really so important. My colleague Fraser Reid, who did probably more of the technical work, is also on the call. I don't know, Fraser, if there's anything you would like to add in terms of the technical elements and actually getting your hands on the platform.
Morning, everybody. I think for myself in dealing very specifically with the platform and with ClimateView, and then collaborating with quite a diverse set of technical inputs from across our transport division, our buildings teams, our energy teams, it became a real central hub of pulling all this key knowledge and information and data together to give not only the storytelling capacity for the politicians and the elected members and the council, but also for those who are very into and specific about the data fundamentals of the transition. It was good for them to be able to dig into that and understand that actually this does come from a place of well-founded data and understanding and knowledge. So yeah, it was a really beneficial piece of work, and not just for Glasgow City Council, but also for Mott MacDonald too. And it's a real opportunity for anybody that does get involved. So I think that's all I'd like to add.
Thank you. I think Jade, it's back to yourself.
Thank you to all three of you, Gavin, Alan, Fraser, for giving us an overview. I'm sure there's loads more that you could share on that project from what you've learned and the benefits and the value that it's generating in Glasgow. But just to quickly highlight some of the things that that sounds just great for me. The fact that the platform and the what you're getting from the platform is strengthening leadership, not just sort of within the city, but also now you're able to communicate in an effective way across Scotland and also nationally now about what Glasgow is doing, and perhaps using that as a platform to support policy making at the national level. That sounds really promising, bringing those two levels of government closer together. Also talking about just breaking down this overwhelm that we feel from the complicated process of climate action planning and moving through that in the 4 steps that Thomas mentioned earlier. So using those as the logic to build up the action plans, building confidence through that logic as well, and certainty. So when we're talking to politicians and decision makers, we can really make strong cases that are backed by evidence and communicate those clearly. So thank you for sharing that. That's it's great to hear what's going on in Glasgow and wider Scotland. There is now a little bit of time for some Q&A. So team behind the scenes have been working tirelessly to try and share these with me as you've been presenting, and I've gathered a few for the panelists we have today on the call. And I'd like to, for this first question, come back to the team at AFRY and Enköping. There's a question here asking how the draft climate change strategy works alongside Enköping's climate city contract. So I don't know if you'd like to share a little bit on how they fit together.
I just answered it in the chat, I think. It follows the principles on the Climate City contract, but Enköping is not applying for the mission label here in this one. So, but they could use it, of course, to do that if they want to. Thank
you. And I think this is it's a more general question. I think it potentially can be answered by both Glasgow and Enköping. It might be nice to get the two perspectives on this. The audience are asking how you secured funding and investment using some of the information that you gathered through your climate change strategy and your planning process. And I think maybe this potentially applies in both contexts. So maybe we start with Enköping again and then hear from the Glasgow team to see how it works there.
Yes, maybe I can start and then you can follow up, Åsa, and Lina, if you want to add something. Well, the first thing is that it's easier to secure the funding when you have the chance to make the actions more concrete and to see the potential for reduction. But so the ways of securing finance can either go by seeking external funding, and in those cases it's really important to have this structure to relate to and to be able to calculate the potential for emission reduction, for example. So this is one way to benefit from the platform in seeking funding. But the other ways is to map the information, and maybe you also can repeat what you said in the chat here. Let me see if I can get this one. Yeah, so some of the actions will be funded in the regular budget, while some of the actions are not yet funded. So we have, I know that the Enköping have pointed through the potential ways to get the funding for the actions. I mean, and you might end up having some actions that you will not be able to fund, and then you're going to have to, that will be one part of your, iteration, and you will have to do changes, and so it will be something you will have to come back to. But as I wrote, some of the actions will be funded in the regular budget. You will just have to, try to allocate resources to it. And some, I mean, it will be up to the politicians as well when they will have this action plan up in the council. Once they decide to take this on, they are also responsible to fund some of the actions. And basically, it's a really good basis for decisions. So you can see, okay, we have this action, and we need to choose some of them in order to meet our target. So. I think that's the main advantage here, to have that clear basis of decisions and see the consequences for both finance and meeting the targets.
And the climate strategy includes the development areas and the action areas for Enköping's municipality, and so it's a strategic document, and the action will, while the actual concrete action are planned in an action plan, placed in an action plan, and one concrete action is to develop a climate investment plan.
I see, as the next step on. So yes. Again, looking at that process of iteration, adding that additional level of detail to explain how financing the plan works. And how does this work in Glasgow City? Could you talk a bit to the delivery vehicles that you also use, and how you, I suppose, move through that process of securing finance and then moving into delivery?
Yes, so similar story. The ClimateView tool has given us a lot of understanding of what the cost is of getting to net zero, but the responsibility for financing that doesn't all sit with the council. So we are facilitating a lot of this development, but one thing we have understood through looking at our work on ClimateView and understanding that the two pathways in totality cost somewhere in the region of 26 to 38 billion pounds, we recognised that we really had to look at the private investor landscape and the private sector to deliver a lot of this infrastructure. So using the ClimateView as some of the basis for developing delivery vehicles and investment vehicles, we managed to secure £4 million in investment from the city. to build the business case for setting up essentially a partnership vehicle with the private sector, which has, there are two vehicles, if you like, that we're looking at. So one of those is a delivery vehicle, and that is predicated on another piece of policy that we have called our local heat and energy efficiency strategy, which set out the reasoning for doing district heating, while the ClimateView tool helped us cost what it would be to deliver that, and takes us to the development of a business case to secure a partner that will come and work with us to deliver that infrastructure. Now, we're still in the process of doing that, so that partner may come with their own finance, or a suite of different financing options that would help us do that. But there are also a number of other interventions that we've identified through the platform that need to be delivered, that are, some of them are the responsibility of the city to deliver, some of them are opportunities that could be delivered by the private sector, and we're setting up an investment vehicle, which is essentially a blend of public and private sector finance, which will be managed external to the council, but will be available to support net zero projects in the city. So by understanding the quantum of what investment is required, we've been able to justify setting up these governance structures to bring the delivery, skills and capacity and the financing to the table to then help these things move forward. So the utilisation of ClimateView has really crystallised the need for these things and our ability to go and do that. So it was £4 million in a landscape of billions is not a lot, but £4 million out of a city budget that is facing pressures from child poverty and fuel poverty and homelessness is a considerable amount of investment in the city into the net zero agenda. And that investment was secured through the ability to demonstrate the value, not only in terms of reduction in CO2, but all of the co-benefits that would help us address poverty and homelessness and these types of things in the city. So that's how the tool has helped us, and that's where we are in that process.
Thank you very much for sharing that, some concrete examples of the mechanisms that you're using in Glasgow, and also recognising that there is an upfront cost associated with these things, as there always is, but the value you gain from it and the way that it helps to accelerate progress is priceless. So thank you. That's really great to hear from you. We're hurtling towards the end of the session. Time has moved so quickly. So I'm going to end on perhaps a question more directed towards how you get started and the practicalities of using the platform. So Thomas, a question for you, I think. Like, what size team do you need to get started using ClimateView and developing your plans with ClimateView? And is it something that's accessible and easily usable for smaller places, say 1,000 people?
So I think the best example is in Scotland, where ClimateView is used between Glasgow and Edinburgh, the very large cities, as well as small communities in the Outer Hebrides, which I think have a hard time to even pronounce. So I think that's a very important part of the idea of having this shared language, is actually even like the work that Glasgow and Edinburgh does actually then support small communities in their work. So the short answer is yes, it can be used very large or very small communities. And as you say, we have some nice examples of that in Scotland and in Sweden, actually.
Thank you, Thomas. So short answer, it can be used by anywhere and anyone, and it should be, because it should be easy to pick up and run with. So thank you. 4 minutes left to go. I think I'm going to draw the session to a close here, so we can all stretch and grab drinks before the next meeting. I want to say a massive thank you to all of you for joining us today, to our speakers and our panelists for sharing the principles from the practitioner's guide, firstly from the team here at ClimateView, but also how that works in practice and some of the lessons from Glasgow City and Enköping. It's been great to hear those practical examples for me, and I'm sure for the audience too. we will, as I said at the beginning, we'll share a link to the practitioner's guide after this call, along with the webinar recording. And I know that people have also requested the presentation. We're more than happy to share that too around all of you. And watch this space for more on the practitioner series in the coming months. We'll try to do this regularly so you can hear some of the lessons and insights, just as we have today from some of the other cities that are using ClimateView today. So thank you very much, and we'll see you all next time.